All right, welcome back, guys. Mike D here. Being that I'm 15 weeks into a cutting diet right now and about to end it on Monday, I figured this would be a good time to give you guys 10 tips to stick to a cutting diet without ruining your fat loss gains. Tip number 1 is going to be maintain a consistent sleep schedule. Not only good quality sleep is important, but also the schedule itself. When you're planning your cut or when you're going through your cutting phase, your meals are going to be spread out ideally. You're going to want to have a proper schedule that you're sticking to every day during the day while you're awake. And it's kind of hard to build a proper schedule during the day if you're building it around a schedule that's not consistent in the first place. Think about it. If you wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning one day and your first meal is going to be at, say, 10, and then you're finished eating by maybe, 8 at night, and then the next day you wake up at 3 in the morning, do you think you're going to make it till 8 at night again without cheating? Maybe you will. Maybe you will one day. Maybe you will a couple of times. But if you do this consistently, you're setting yourself up for disaster, because the longer that you're awake and hungry, the higher the chances of you cheating on your diet. And ultimately, what you want to do is mitigate that risk by having a consistent schedule. Now, the quality of the sleep itself is also important, because you have your hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, that tell your body whether you're hungry or whether you're full. And when you're not getting proper sleep, these are all out of whack, and you're going to be 1,000 times hungrier than you're already going to be. And you're going to feel 1,000 times less full than you're already going to feel when you're on your cut. On top of that, there are studies showing that people who get lower quality sleep or less sleep are more likely to lose muscle mass and retain fat, while people getting better sleep and more sleep are more likely to retain muscle mass while losing fat. So the poorer your sleep quality and the less you're sleeping, the worse it is altogether in so many different ways that's going to ruin your cut. So do what you can to make sure you maintain a consistent sleep schedule, and do what you can to get as high quality sleep as possible, which is going to be difficult enough as it is when you're on a prep anyway. So don't do anything to make it worse. Tip number 2 is going to be fasted cardio. And that's not because I think fasted cardio is any better than regular cardio. It's really more about delaying the first meal in the morning. And also it helps contribute to your health and getting your daily steps in and all those things, obviously. But the longer you can delay your first meal, for me personally, and for a lot of other people that I've spoken to, it seems a lot easier to delay the first meal than it is to avoid eating after your metabolism already gets running. So when I wake up in the morning, it takes me a good 3 hours to have my first meal, because I do my fasted cardio. I drink my coffee multiple times. I drink a bunch of water. I journal and get a couple other things done. And it really doesn't bother me that much to wait a few hours to have my first meal. But once I get that first meal in me, I am starving the entire day. Now, I wouldn't recommend like intermittent fasting until it's 6 or 8 at night or anything like that, but I would definitely recommend trying to wait to have your first meal as long as you can get by without it bothering you too much. Tip number 3 that I just mentioned actually is journaling and tracking variables. Now, when I say journaling, I'm not talking about a diet journal or a workout journal, although those are obviously important as well. I'm talking about like a diary where you sit down in the morning. This is what I do every single day. I write down just thoughts that come into my head about what I did yesterday, how I feel. For example, I might say something like, woke up with an upset stomach this morning. It feels really tight. Maybe it's that cheese that I had last night with my cheat meal. It was cheddar. And then, maybe that doesn't make any difference for me, but a couple weeks later, I have the same experience and I don't really remember the last time that it happened. But when you start to notice these patterns, you can actually look back in your journal and kind of get a pattern recognition going and realize, oh, okay, I see that this specific thing happened on these specific days. And I found this common denominator between those days. And it'll help you to identify things that might be going wrong and possibly affecting your cut. And on top of that, it just helps with a lot of the mental aspect of the cut. So for me, the first few weeks of a cut are always easy, but when I get about maybe 8 weeks in, it just gets so mentally challenging. And I start to try and justify refeeds that I might not need, start to try and justify cheat meals. And just writing this down in my journal, hey, I'm considering having a cheat meal today. I'm not sure if it's really something that I need or if it's just my brain trying to convince myself to have a cheat meal because I'm really hungry and being a pussy. Just writing out that thought might help me to delay the process of having a cheat meal for one more day, because I've identified the fact that it might be my own brain trying to play tricks on me, and that will help hold me off a little bit longer, and I might decide not to have it. So I find journaling extremely helpful. even though it's not necessarily something that you might have expected to hear in this video. And I also mentioned tracking variables as part of tip number 3. What I mean by that is taking measurements of your waist, weighing yourself on a scale, tracking your calories and all these things. When you're in a cut, you don't always notice a linear progression. As a matter of fact, you really never do. It's not like you start off at 200 pounds one day and the next day you're 199 and the next day you're 198, next day you're 197. It's kind of like you're at 200 pounds one day, you're at 201 another day, and then like maybe a week and a half later, you're at 198.2. And the weight isn't the only variable that you can track. And sometimes that stalls out, right? So it's a great confidence boost when I'm tracking other things like my waist measurements and stuff like that. Even my pressure on my CPAP. I find that as I go further through a cut and I start to lose some fat mass in my neck, I'll lower the pressure. And just seeing results like this here and there, it gives me multiple different things that can kind of give me a little bit of an energy boost to stick to my cut. Maybe my weight didn't move all week, but then I have to turn down my seat pressure by, 0.4. And then I'm like, wow, I lost a little bit of mass in my neck or something. And now I don't want to cheat. Tip number 4 is a pretty obvious one. If possible, try not to have junk food in your house. Now, I know this is difficult for certain people because you might live with someone else or multiple other people, and maybe you share a fridge or whatever. But if possible, definitely try to set up your environment so that it's conducive to your goals. It's a lot more likely that you're going to cheat if you walk into your kitchen and there's a bunch of cheese doodles and ice cream sitting there than it is if you walk into your kitchen and you have all healthy food. And the only way to get a cheat meal is to drive 20 minutes or whatever the case may be. Set up your environment so that it's conducive to your gains. It's going to help you in the long run. And this advice goes for not only cutting, but just everything in life, really. Tip number 5 is going to be eat low caloric density foods. Things like vegetables, sugar-free Jell-O, egg whites, anything that's going to help fill up your stomach and make you feel more satiated for a little bit longer is going to help you a lot instead of eating something like peanuts that are just loaded with a bunch of calories and you eat 3 of them and you're already at the limit for your meal. You also have stretch receptors in your stomach, and the more your stomach expands, the more it signals to your body that you're full. Now, really, these are just Band-Aids. The deeper you get into your cut, I'm sure some of you guys know this, nothing's going to solve that hunger, but the more food you can put in yourself, the more food volume without going over your calories for the day, the better off you're going to be. I actually make these little gelatins. I'll take Knox gelatin, just pure gelatin that you order on Amazon or get at Walmart or whatever. And I'll mix in a couple tablespoons of 100% pure Hershey's cocoa. And it's like 60 calories for a gigantic bowl. And sometimes I'll do that when I'm really hungry. Another thing I like to do is cucumbers with some salt and even some balsamic vinegar. I got that tip from my coach. So anything you can do to satiate that hunger without piling a lot of calories inside yourself is definitely going to help you stick to your cut a lot easier. Tip number 6 is Stan Efferding's 10-minute walk protocol. I'm sure some of you guys have heard of this before. I'm sure some of you probably do it. I do it after every single meal, but basically every time you have a meal, just take a walk for 10 minutes, even if it's inside your house. I do this all the time. I will literally just walk back and forth in my room. I'll walk up and down the stairs. This is great during a bulk because it keeps your metabolism going and it helps food move through your body. But I find it's also extremely helpful during a cut because it's like this mental trigger. It's a stimulus that tells you the meal is over. It's time to stop eating. And when you have triggers like that, it really helps you just not continue to binge eat when you're still starving. Meal's over, get up, start walking immediately. And it's just a cue for your body to know, okay, the meal is over, it's time to stop. Now, the additional benefit of this is that you're getting a lot more steps in, which helps you burn more calories, keep your metabolism going, and help you burn even more fat, which is obviously a great side effect. So highly recommend Stan Efferding's 10-minute walk. If you haven't heard of it before, just look up 10-minute walk or Stan Efferding on YouTube. It'll come right up. Tip number 7 is going to be diet soda, water, black coffee, anything that has 0 calories that you can drink and fill up your stomach. Again, you have those stretch receptors in your stomach. Doing this will help you feel more satiated throughout the day. You can also do sugar-free gum, even though technically those have a couple of calories, I believe. But liquids inside you will make you feel a little bit more satiated throughout the day. And when you're dying to just put something in your mouth, it's a lot better if it's a 0-calorie liquid rather than food. So Me personally, I drink a ton of black coffee, which is not really the greatest for me because it interferes with my sleep. Also, diet sodas. Club soda is another good one because it's carbonated. It helps stretch out your stomach and it doesn't have caffeine in it like diet sodas. Tip number 8 is going to be spread out your meals evenly and have them on a schedule. When you don't have a plan for your meals, it's very difficult to stick to a proper program and avoid overeating because you tend to sit around and sit there and say, all right, it's 2 p.m. right now. I can probably eat something, and I think that's not going to put me too far above the calories that I want to be at for this time. But then you find out it's 5 o'clock and you've already eaten everything because you keep justifying why it's okay to have a meal right now, and it's really not. And next thing you know, you're out of calories and you still have to be up for 6 more hours, and it's just a recipe for you to cheat on your diet. So having the meals planned, me personally, what I do is 8 a.m., 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 5 p.m., 8 p.m. 5 meals every 3 hours. And that really helps me stick to my caloric limit because I never just get hungry and just decide to eat. I always know I have my meals at a specific time. If I'm hungry and it's 1 o'clock and I don't have a meal plan, I'll want to eat and I'll probably eat because why not, right? But if I know that my meal is scheduled for 2 o'clock, I could just tell myself I have to keep myself busy for another hour, and I'll probably take a walk or two just to keep myself busy, burn even more calories. And then by the time I'm done, it's time to eat. Okay, tip number 9 is going to be carb cycling and cheat meals once a week. Now, the cheat meals we'll get into in a second. They have to be controlled to an extent. But carb cycling is basically, for those of you who don't know, you have days where you have lower carbohydrates, days where you have medium carbohydrates, and days where you have higher carbohydrates. Now, the real reasoning behind this is to help replenish and deplete glycogen stores throughout the week so that you can still get decent training sessions in while also burning fat. But I find it really helps a lot too with just cravings and sticking to the diet because I know all the time when I'm hungry, if I can make it through today, I've got a day tomorrow where I can eat a little bit more calories than this. And sometime in the next few days or next week, I have a day where I'm going to eat like 4,000 calories, even though my normal daily calories are closer to 2,000. This also just helps keep your metabolism going. I would highly recommend looking up carb cycling tutorials on YouTube. Maybe look up Justin Harris carb cycling. He's a coach who's pretty famous for his carb cycling protocols. I think Fouad Abiad also has some great videos on it. So I highly recommend checking those out. But carb cycling has been super helpful for me on my cut, and I would recommend it to other people as well. Okay, and tip number 10 is going to be try to have your last meal as close to bed as possible. Now, if it's a gigantic meal, if it's going to be a cheat meal that might screw up your digestion, maybe this isn't the greatest idea. Maybe you want to give it an hour or two. But if it's one of those days where you're just eating super clean and starving, if you have a long period of time between your last meal and the time you go to sleep, you're just asking for trouble because you're going to be laying there hungry. You're not going to be able to fall asleep, and you're going to get up and snack, or you're at least more likely to get up and snack. So me personally, I try to save that last meal for 8 p.m. Like I said, I go to bed not long after that, like 9 o'clock the latest usually. And if I'm really like that hungry, where I'm just like starving to death and I have no energy and I feel like nothing's going to satiate me, whenever I have that last meal, I'll literally just get right into bed after because I don't want to risk staying up and being hungry. Willpower is great to have and all, but you don't want to depend on willpower in this game. It's not going to get you anywhere. You want to depend on having a proper protocol and just setting things up properly so that you're set up for success. So that's it, guys. Those are my 10 tips to stick to your cutting diet. If you have any other helpful tips, please drop a comment below. If you have any questions, drop a comment. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. It helps the algorithm so I can get this content out to more people and help grow the channel. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.